Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be here today. I want to introduce you to one of our students, and I collaborate with her on some projects. Her name is Amisha Shrimanker, and she is a copywriter and now a consultant. And it's really exciting to have you here. Thanks, Amisha.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having me. I am super excited to dive into this interview with you.
Yeah. So you came into Fractional Freedom and came into the consulting space having extensive experience as a copywriter, and not just like any copywriter, but a really premier, exclusive copywriter that's worked on huge projects and launches and multi-million dollar brands. And it was really neat to see you come into this space as a consultant. So share maybe a little bit about your business background and where you specialized prior to getting into consulting.
Yeah, sure. So I started my copywriting. I started my freelance journey in 2018. So it's almost 4 years and it feels forever. I think in the online space, 4 years, like it feels like 400 years when you're
Yeah.
working on one launch after the other. And I'm a conversion copywriter by trade, to get geeky here because that's different from brand copywriting and,
Yes.
agency copywriting, the
Yes.
creative sorts. We're kind of like very big on the data, like, customer interviews, market research. And a lot of my clients are like, you take that long to do research? Yeah, before I write copy, because the copy is not a problem. The research really is. So yeah,
Yes.
all that said, super geeky on the data part and then writing the copy. And I've been doing launches. I started as a sales page copywriter. That was my claim to fame. And clients would come up to me and say, hey, I know you wrote so and so sales page. Can you write one for me too? And they're like, you know what? We would like for you to write our emails as well. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just specialize myself and call myself a launch copywriter. And that's what I've been doing. Yeah, launch copy. And, along the lines, I'm kind of multi passionate.
Yeah.
I have created my own group coaching program, which teaches people how to audit. And I kind of started doing audits and the copy side of things and the offer side of things, I want to say a couple of years ago. And I like that it engaged my strategic part of the brain and not so much of the copywriting. And I started teaching that to other copywriters and digital marketers. And then when I heard about you launching the Fractional Freedom program, the consulting incubator, I was like, something inside of me knew that that was just the next step for me in my professional trajectory. And I'm like, I have to be a part of that because it just felt like I'm going to be learning so much more, doing bigger, more important things. And yeah, so
I love that you are sharing this part of your journey. And it's really interesting because, and I'm so glad that you are speaking specifically about what it means to be a conversion copywriter, because I think people in our space understand what that means.
yeah.
But more recently, I brought you in to help with a client. This is actually very recent, within days of us recording this podcast. So it really worked out nicely. And this particular client is super successful in the offline space,
Yep.
like multi 8-figure business. And when I said you need a real conversion copywriter, like we need to get somebody in here fast. I think he was so surprised because many people outside of our world don't understand that difference, right?
Yep.
They're like, well, what is it? How is this different than just like the person that writes my social media posts? Or how is this different from other agencies that I've used? And it really is sort of this ninja specialty that I think a lot of people in traditional business don't necessarily even know it exists. And so as you've grown in your copywriting skill set and client base, it sounds like, and what I'm hearing you say is that it made you even hungrier for the strategy part of
Mhm.
the copywriting that you had historically specialized in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what I love about conversion copywriting, unlike other copywriting, like you mentioned, that you kind of dive into the strategy when you're working on launches. You kind of understand how to optimize an offer and, hey, we should throw in an upsell here. This makes sense for a downsell, all that good stuff. But I think what I learned and what I love about consulting, the journey you took us through, Laura, in the 8 weeks that we spent together, was you're thinking beyond the client's one launch.
Yeah.
It's their overall business. You're looking for opportunities where, hidden opportunities that you can leverage, optimize, solve bigger problems. And that was like, yes,
Mhm.
I'm done working with, I mean, not done. I still love launches, but this is like you're really called to think bigger,
Yeah.
more creatively, using all the skills that you already have. So I love that the consulting builds on my conversion copywriting skills and the a little bit of the strategy that I have learned over the years and just takes it so much bigger. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. What do you think what was the point for you that you realized that you wanted to work both on strategy as well as conversion copy? Like, was there any point in which you can look at and you realized that you knew there was something bigger for you to be doing when it comes to business strategy?
that's a great question. So many things, actually. And a little bit of a personal side. I like reinventing myself.
Yeah.
I had another business before I even came into the digital space. 12 years ago, I started something else and I took it to a million in 7 years. It was
Oh my
not a digital business. It was an export business. And that's thanks to my background because I wasn't raised here. I lived abroad and I knew what the markets looked abroad. And I'm like, okay, now that I'm here and I'm
God.
raising a family, what can I do to kind of make money where I don't have to work for somebody? So I like being creative. I like reinventing myself. And 6 years ago, this is funny. When I gave birth to my daughter, my second child, I told myself, like, you know what, with the export business, I need to stop traveling. I can't do a lot of international travel. And it was exciting at the time. I'm like, I need to do something which is online and, less, it's where I am more home with the kids. And I have two children and enter the digital space. And it took a while to kind of find my footing, like what can I do? And again, it was a career shift totally from someone who did, export sales, international sales to, gosh, what is copywriting today? Like
Mm,
my emails look different,
yeah.
the whole thing is different. I had to train myself, go through extensive education, everything, learn. It was a whole different language. I want to say earlier this year, I felt this pull, this thing like, you know what? I did what I had to do. I'm
Mhm.
ready to reinvent myself
Yeah.
again. And I'm like, and I didn't know what it was. And I kind of felt that sense when I started teaching other copywriters and coaching them.
Mhm.
And, and I do a lot of audits in my current business. And I like the strategy part of it. Like, let's look why this is failing. Let's see what we can do
Mm.
here. And I liked a bit of that coaching aspect, the strategy part. And I felt this need to reinvent again professionally. I'm like, I don't know what all this means. And I don't know
Mhm.
when I saw that post. And you and I are in the same mastermind,
Yeah.
Digital Insiders. When you kind of announced that, hey, I am thinking of doing this and teaching people how to become consultants, something just clicked inside, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I gotta find out. And I remember sending you Voxers on my evening walks, and you were so patient with me. You would reply to all of them, and I tried to get so much information. I even
Yeah.
connected with Sarah to say, like, hey, what does this program look like? And this is what I have. And I just knew within that first week when I signed up that I'm in the right place. I am, ready for this next reinvention. And I just knew it's a gut feeling, and I knew I was in the right path. So
Oh my
if that
gosh.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing to hear because for me, there was a period of time in which people were coming to me and saying, can you teach me how to do what it is that you do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I think you have to be a particular type of person. I think you have to have different types of backgrounds. I think you have to be a curious person. I think you have to be the kind of person that wants to go deeper on problems. I think you need to be the kind of person that likes to challenge yourself. Like, there was all these characteristics that I wasn't sure I could
Yeah.
package up. I was a little bit skeptical. And then as I started to get to know the people who are interested in consulting and drawn to consulting, I was like, oh my gosh, like there is a type. There is a type, I think, of us. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Yesterday, I recorded a podcast with Anna, and she's that type. There's a type of person who is forever curious, who's that lifelong learner, who
Yeah.
is very smart, like just knows that their brain is their biggest asset. and also is a little bit restless. And I think that's what makes you a good
Mm.
consultant, because you're always like, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or what
Yes.
if we looked at it from this perspective? And
Yeah.
that is so valuable. So, as a former 7-figure business owner, which is fascinating. I did not know that about you. And that's true about myself as well.
Yes.
Um, and for example, many of our students have had tremendous success. Like, Anna was an executive director of a nonprofit. There was many of us have had these really interesting backgrounds. We know that when you're in that role,
Mm-hmm.
you can't see the forest, the trees. Like, you just can't.
Yeah.
And having that person who's the strategic thought partner is so, so valuable.
Oh, totally, totally. I think when you see your clients' faces lit up, like, oh my gosh, really? Like, I
Mhm.
didn't even think of that.
Yes.
It's kind of, I can't even begin to explain it. It's a different feeling altogether. I mean, I think I can go to bed with just that feeling in my heart. And I'm like, I did a good day's work.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think so many of us are also working for clients
Yeah.
who are making a massive difference in the world. And the more that we get
Yes.
to help them, the more they get to help people. So, for example, the client that you and I are working on together right now is in personal development and mental health, particularly for entrepreneurs. And these are two people who have had tremendous success in business and were keeping some of their emotional and mental and relational struggles quiet, and
Mm-hmm.
realized that it was something that they needed to bring to the world and make it a more public conversation. So these are the kinds of people that we get to help. I know that one of your first projects is in mental health as well,
Yeah.
consulting projects, which is so super exciting. And by helping them get their product and get their services into the hands of more people, we get to create that ripple effect, from a place of really a great lifestyle, great income, so that we
Yes.
can keep ourselves in a good place, which I think is really important too.
Yeah. No, totally. I 100% agree.
Yeah. Is there anything else about consulting that you find either surprising, or that maybe what surprised you, or what did you discover as you started to get into consulting and start doing a little bit about it, that has made you the decision to even join the mastermind and really go all in on consulting?
What surprised me was how, oh my gosh, I can't even, I was thinking like, it's going to be tons to learn. And there is, it's not that, I don't know how to explain this. Um, but how simple it is, like how you're, and I don't know if this is you, Laura, but you make things like, I'm very chill. I remember that line. I'm very chill with my clients. And, when we looked at your templates and things, I'm like, yeah, there really isn't, it's not overcomplicated. It's really looking for those simple tweaks and just really optimizing what there is. There's nothing like, okay, we're going to build you a new funnel, or we're going to advise you to create a new course and, da 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 da. But there's nothing like that. It's really looking for those golden opportunities within the client's business. And an established client, of course, they have
Yes.
it's a proof of concept. They have all that. They have brand equity, all the good things. Yeah, it's kind of like solving the bigger problems, but yet it's easier than it appears. Or maybe I'm doing this wrong. I'm getting this wrong. But
I think you're actually getting it right. I
okay.
too. And I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting to hear you say that, because I say that and like, it's simpler than you think it is. Like, you're going to be so
Yes.
surprised that consulting does not need to happen within a 14-hour work day,
Mm-hmm.
coming up with all new strategies. Because I think when we think about consultants, we think about, consultants working for like big six firms,
Yes.
being in New York City, working 15-hour days,
Yeah.
and there are consultants that do that, but they also work for Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
Like, even if we prescribed that for our clients, they'd never be able to handle it. Even an
Yeah.
8 or 10 or $12 million company, they wouldn't have the resources or the infrastructure, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to implement fast enough to get an ROI on the consulting arrangement. So for us, it's about paring down, like looking at all of the things that make that business complicated and trying to find the levers that will give them the fastest return on investment, so that they can. So we build trust. That's one of my biggest goals in the first 90 days, is just for them to believe that if they do
Yeah.
what I tell them that they're going to do, that they'll make more money than if they don't follow my advice or hire me.
Yeah, and that was another thing that really surprised me. I didn't think that consultants would do that.
Yeah.
Because on the contrary, like as a copywriter, I mean, I am very clear with my clients, like, hey, there is no guarantee that this copy is going to make you money, because a lot of it depends on the kind of traffic you have, obviously your offer, and these are things I will come in and optimize and give you recommendations. But at the end of the day, you've got to have some following and something to kind of have a successful launch and hit those numbers. I can give you all the tools, but I can't say that, it sucked because the
Yeah.
copy failed you, because the copy is really the last thing. I mean, you like direct response marketing as much as I do. So
Yeah.
I could never make that guarantee. It's really your offer, your audience. But what stunned me when I learned that in the first or second week, you're like, and you said this is how you position your services and that's how you started. Like, I will, guarantee you that ROI within 90 days, and yeah, of us working together, and this is how much you'll make, or this is the value you're going to receive. And that was kind of like, mind boggling, because I have never done that as a copywriter. And maybe it may look different for a Facebook ads manager or someone like that. But yeah, that was like, wow, this is really cool. And I'm like, how can people possibly say no to that?
The easiest sale in the world,
Right?
as long as you're being honest about it. And I
Yeah.
think for copywriting or anybody who's done few services, your scope is so narrow. Like you
Yeah.
don't have insight. I will say to somebody, I we don't have enough data here. I'm happy to help you, but we don't have enough data here for me to be able to determine whether or not you're going to get an ROI within my
Mm.
typical time frame. And actually, the client we're working on together, that was the conversation, and they hired me anyways. But I think being able to assess and look at the big picture and say, like, if this works as half as well as we hope, will you still get an ROI? And typically with a more established client, the answer is yes, like they
Yeah.
will. And that means I can sell the work in integrity. And I'm
Mhm.
also setting the expectation that, that they will be able to at least break even, worst case scenario. And then, of course, that's rarely what happens. Worst case scenario is rarely what takes place.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wow, Laura or Amisha or anybody who is consulting is one of those rare people that does what it is that they say they're going to do. And you become this non-negotiable in the business. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really, it's super rewarding.
It is.
So where do you see yourself in a couple years in terms of your consulting business? What do you see
Ah,
that looking like?
that's a great question. So well, definitely, I'd love to have a full roster
Mhm.
and kind of like, leave behind copywriting, because yeah, I'm right. I would love to leave that behind, or at least, I mean, I do have a network of really brilliant copywriters who could kind of like do the implementation work like I am currently doing right now. I am consulting with my mental health app consulting client and doing a little bit of the implementation. I am providing with them with a copy. I'd really like not to do the copywriting in a couple of years and just purely focus on consulting. What I also want to do is, because I know the kind of person I am, I get bored within one space for, if I'm
Yeah.
always there. I would like to expand beyond info products.
Yes.
And I'm glad that this mental health app was it's a good consulting client. And when it came to me, I was like, I don't know if I should do this. Can I do this? You know what? I've never worked with a SaaS company, so to speak. Let's do it. And I'm loving it. It's surprising. And I'm like, what else could I open up to? Like, I mean, I don't have to be in the coaching info product space. There's a whole lot of, possibilities out there, and I'm open, and I'd like to kind of explore more of that too. So
I love that you brought that up. We talked about that a little bit in our mastermind. I remember you bringing the mental health app client to one of our brain trusts,
yeah,
and I really encouraged you to pitch them
yes,
your consulting. I was like, this is what I want you to do, because I knew that once on the surface, we could be a little bit intimidated, like, oh, it's
yeah,
SaaS, or maybe it's an app, or it's tech, and we don't know tech. With that said, when you pull back, business is simply a sum of moving parts, and they're
mm,
all the same parts for the same, for the most part. The mechanisms might be different, but it's
Yeah.
not outside of our realm of understanding as people who have spent a lot of time in strategy. So for example, with a enterprise level SaaS sale, it may be a business development play versus a paid traffic ads play, but it's the
Mm,
same. For the most part, it's the same decision points,
yeah.
and the same customer flow. And I knew you could do it. I'm like, you would nail this. And the cool thing too is that when you bring those types of strategies to companies that don't know about it, they're like, what? Like their mind is blown.
Yeah.
Like I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on agencies, marketing agencies, and nobody's ever taught me this before. And you're like this genius to them.
Yeah.
And that's also when I get really excited when our consulting students pick up traditional businesses, because I know it puts you in that kind of role. And the referrals are just a matter of time after that. So it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Um, so as we wrap up, any final words of wisdom, or what would you say to people if they're thinking about joining Fractional Freedom and have a similar background to you?
I would say do it. I think it's one of the best things that you could do for your business. I mean, even if you don't want to become a consultant full time, but just the thinking ability of how you can stretch your brain and solve the bigger problems in your client's business will kind of position you as a great expert, just beyond a copywriter or, even worse, an order taker. I mean, not that, people are doing that, but, yeah, I think it would kind of like put you on par with the client,
Mhm.
just with that, ability to strategize and look for hidden opportunities and kind of, how you can optimize those. Just by doing that piece alone will kind of set you apart from other copywriters or other Facebook ad managers or whatever you're doing. So
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here. So if people want to get in touch with you and want to learn more about your copywriting, or just, get connected, what's the best way for them to look you up?
I have my website, thecopycrew.com, or you can look me up on Instagram. That's where I hang out. I love Instagram. I am very friendly in the DMs. If you can lower your expectations, you might like my reels. But I am really cool to chat up in
You
the
are.
DMs. Yeah. And that's where I like, making personal connections because I like building relationships. So that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amisha, for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me.